Before I talk about the strategies of one way about going about young adult outreach, I want to share a bit of wisdom that Bishop Caggiano from the Bridgeport Diocese in Connecticut shared with all of us at the convocation not too long ago. This is not an exact quote, but he said in so many words, he said, "There's no one program, there's no one structure, there's no one way of going about things that's going to save the church." He said, "There's already been a Savior, and his name is Jesus Christ." And it's important for people like myself who every waking moment is really consumed in trying to figure out how to go about young adult outreach or going about ministry, but just to keep in mind that our main goal, our main job, and it kind of leads me right into the two pillars of our system, is to help young adults encounter Christ. Help young adults grow in the relationship with Jesus Christ. So we got two pillars, starting off how we go about young adult outreach in the Archdiocese of New York. Connect with God, connect with each other. And I just said the first and most important aim of any outreach, of any ministry, is to help young people encounter Jesus Christ, grow in that relationship with him, make disciples, make saints, get people to heaven. This is why we do everything that we're doing. And it's something that I've noticed just through going around the country and hearing about all the different programs, sometimes that gets lost in the mix of why people are doing what they're doing. So again, first and foremost, most important pillar, connect with Jesus Christ. The second is to connect with each other, especially young people in the Archdiocese of New York. We're dealing with people from Manhattan, people from it's like the most transient, busiest area in the world, to 2 hours north, we've got farm country where there's young adults who haven't left their farm for generations. And so, we have a job of trying to connect those people with each other. Every younger person they're looking for community, they're looking for family, they're looking for their home, they're looking for their future spouse. So we take that seriously, connect with God and connect with each other. And within those two pillars, we have a two-program system. And the Love and Life Encountered program and the You Did It To Me Apostolic Volunteer Program. And I like to explain these two programs using a little bit of a biblical analogy. We're all familiar when Jesus said to Peter, "Peter, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." Now, according to tradition, historically, I've been told, that when Jesus was saying this to Peter, they were actually standing on this massive rock. And there was a huge pit back then on this rock, or in this rock. And back then they thought it was Hades. They thought it was the gates of hell. So it's interesting. So it's possible that Jesus, when he was saying this to Peter, and he was literally pointing and saying, these gates will not prevail against it. And the bottom of that pit is the biggest spring that goes into the Jordan River. So according to tradition, historically, a lot of people consider that very spot where Jesus founded the church with Peter the beginning of the Jordan River, which is fascinating because we have in the book of Revelation, the imagery of the river of life flowing from the Lamb of God. Now there's two seas that are part of the Jordan River, right? There's the Sea of Galilee, and there's the Dead Sea. I've never been, but I've heard and I've seen pictures. The Sea of Galilee is filled with life, fish galore in it, life around it. The Dead Sea, it's literally dead. No life in it, no life around it. Now, it's the same river. So scientifically speaking, the only reason why the Sea of Galilee is filled with life and the Dead Sea is dead, and it's a great analogy of love, is because the Sea of Galilee receives the Jordan River and it gives of the Jordan River. The Dead Sea just receives. And we know, like in any other loving relationship, we got to receive the love of the other or receive the love of God and then give of ourselves. If we just receive in this consumerist culture that we're living, all about me, just receiving, we turn into the culture of death and we're dead. We're spiritually dead. So we've developed these two programs with that understanding. The Love and Life Encounter program, we've set up all of these opportunities for young adults to receive God's life and love. And then we set up the You Did It To Me Apostolic Volunteer Program to set up all these opportunities for young adults to give of themselves. Because especially in New York City, we are in ground zero of the culture of death. So we're convinced that if we can present these opportunities for young adults to receive and to give of themselves, we can slowly help transform the culture of New York, but not only the culture of New York, but of the world, more into the culture of life than into the culture of death. Now, within that two-pillar system, within that two-program system, we developed a four-category system about going about events. Now, that being said, it's a very important point I want to make. Now, these are the type of events that we put on from the office, but it's very important, in my opinion, when you do young adult outreach, when you do ministry, it's happening at the ground level. There's got to be the parish groups, the young adult groups, the small groups. So as a diocesan employee, I kind of, a little bit my main job is to serve and support the 80-plus young adult groups that are happening throughout the whole Archdiocese of New York. And that's the majority of my job, to serve and support those leaders in those groups, because it's got to happen at the ground level. The encounter with God is going to happen at the ground level. But with that being said, depending on the need of where we are in the diocese, again, as we're dealing with everything from Manhattan, Staten Island, all the way up to Sullivan, Ulster counties, which is farm country, we do type of events that kind of help meet the young adult where they're at. So first we have disciple events. And first and foremost, as I said, we're trying to help young adults encounter Jesus Christ. So all throughout the diocese, we have various regions, we make sure that disciple events are happening. These are more in-house terms. Out there, people don't know what exactly we're doing. But it's all the sacramental opportunities. All right, so it's young adult masses, confession opportunities, adoration. All right, so with every part of the diocese, I make sure at least once a month, I'm asking the coordinators to make sure that there's some type of sacramental event happening. All right? So that's the first event, the disciple event. The second is the friend category. And this is all the catechetical opportunities for young adults to learn something. So throughout the whole Archdiocese, I make sure at least once a month there's some type of theology on tap happening, book club, Bible study. We do a great Love and Responsibility summer series. During the summer, we bring in the top speakers on theology of the body, love, responsibility, sexual morality, anything that the young adult is learning something. All right, so every month there's a disciple event happening. Every month there's a friend event happening, a catechetical, a learning opportunity. Again, and you can, and what I like about this structure is that you can, depending on where you are and what type of outreach you're doing and where you're in the country, you can kind of just fill in whatever you want. So all it really is, again, disciples, a sacramental opportunity, have something happening. Friend event, an opportunity to make sure that there's something that young adults are learning, something about the faith. And so these are just some pictures from our various events from the friend. And this third is the acquaintance category. And this is all our volunteer opportunities, because no matter where a young adult is at their faith, they want to give of themselves. And it's also all of our kind of church-themed parties, if you will. In the sense, it's getting the foot in the door of the church. A lot of young adults, they might not be ready to enter into a church or to go to mass or go to confession yet, but we kind of get, and the church could be like a scary place for them, or almost a threatening place to them. So we do various church parties. We do a big New Year's Eve party every year in Times Square. It's phenomenal. We have like a young adult mass, then we have an open bar DJ downstairs with food. The cops let us see the ball drop. We go out at like 11:50 to see the ball drop. They escort us out. They escort us back in. It's a phenomenal time. We do Mardi Gras parties. We do St. Patrick's Day parties. We team up with Tim Tebow, who does a special needs prom throughout the country, always the Friday before St. Valentine's Day. We do that. And all these parties we do in the church. So we got young adults who are away, kind of coming to the parties, and they realize, okay, this church isn't that big, scary place. They get to know young adults. They get to know the priest, seminarians, Sisters of Life, the CFRs who are usually present. And it kind of invites them in. And again, as I said, it's all of our volunteer opportunities as well, especially with the program system of giving young adults an opportunity to give of themselves. And the last category is our seeker category. And these are just purely secular events. These young adults don't even know that we're putting them on. We do jazz nights at times and Fridays in Manhattan. It's everything from bar hopping to going and clubbing to karaoke to bowling to hiking, depending on where you are, in the diocese or what the young adults are doing in that area that you live in. Just do whatever they're doing. We go to Citi Field, to Mets games, to Yankees games. We started something called CNYC Fitness. It's Pilates, it's boxing, pick-up basketball, pick-up soccer, things young adults are doing anyway. And so we just kind of catch them, if you will, or invite them to that. So especially if they're very far from the church, they're not going to go to adoration, but they're going to play pick-up basketball. They're going to play soccer. And so it's our way, and when I talk about the four-category system, we don't look at it as four different categories. We kind of compare it to the spiritual journey. We know the spiritual journey, right? We've got the unitive way, the illuminative way, and the purgative way, right? And it's not three different aspects. And according to the way church teaches about it, it's three aspects along the same way, union with God. And we kind of look at this category system that way. They're not four distinct categories. Young adults are in and out. It's not like we don't necessarily catch somebody from seeker and then we bring them up. It does happen, but it's four aspects along the same way. Union, encountering God, growing that relationship with Jesus Christ. And using Pope Francis, he talks about the law of gradualness. slowly bringing that young adult to God and this category system helps us do that. And a very important part of this whole category system is love and invitation. First, in the sense of invitation, we can help the young adult, invite them to the next level. We'll catch them at a jazz event, and then we'll invite them to the special needs prom, because who's going to say no to going to a prom and helping out with special needs? Before they know it, they're in St. Malachi's Church. And then we could be like, oh, by the way, Cardinal Doan's doing this big mass. We got Matt Marr and Audrey Sal leading the music. There's a big party at this Iguana Salsa Club afterwards. You should come to that. They're like, oh, okay, why not? Before they know it, they find themselves possibly in line to go to confession because they're seeing a line of 200 people, and it's not that threatening. All right, so we've seen this time and time again, just that slow invitation and loving the people, the young adult, where they're at. So important. I tell the coordinators all the time, we are getting paid to love. We are getting paid to be Catholic. Love them. And I'm not talking about just some type of floozy 1960, 70, I'm talking about love. I'm talking about really listening to them. And we saw great examples of this throughout the presentations. Timothy O'Malley talked about that, how that older couple would open up their home to all of them. That's real love. That's encountering them, listening to them. We saw a beautiful example of it even with the Mr. Rogers video. When he was being interviewed by Joan Rivers, right? He was loving her. That's what, if you want to be good at your ministry, if you want your outreach to be successful, love. Be authentically Catholic. Because that's what we're being asked to do. Now, I also talk about, there's a huge spiritual significance of what we're doing here. That's kind of like the structure of what we're doing, but we can't undermine the spiritual significance that's happening behind the scenes. All right, so one thing I always encourage people to, no matter what ministry they're doing, what type of outreach they're doing, your personal lives, your work, first and foremost, I encourage everybody to really concretely consecrate it, hand it over to the Blessed Virgin Mary. I can't tell you, I can go through a million stories of how, because I gave this program to Our Lady, dramatically things have changed. Torrents of grace have happened. Structure was in place, things were in place. But we can't undermine how important the significance of this reality is. Basically, what Marian consecration means is that you're giving Mary your full permission in your own life and in your ministry and your outreach to complete her motherly task, which is to form us into other Christs. So I'm giving Our Lady permission because, in a sense, I got hired to do this. It is kind of my program, in a sense, if you will. I have the power, in a sense, to hand it over to her. And dramatically things happen. So I'm giving her permission to do that. Giving her permission to move freely. And it's the surest, according to St. Louis de Montfort. Now, there's different formulas of consecration, right? There's the Maximilian Kolbe formula, the St. Louis de Montfort 33 formula. There's the 33 Days to Morning Glory, Father Michael Gately formula. But, talking about that, it's the surest, easiest, shortest, most perfect means of becoming a saint, of getting to heaven, of becoming holy. So I always say it to people when I talk about so what I've experienced through our program, it's the surest, easiest, shortest, most perfect means of reaching out to the young adults, giving Our Lady permission. Because there's a lot of things that happen. She protects us and so many different things. There's a great story. I've been blessed to go to Lourdes many times and be able to work in Lourdes and give tours and whatnot. And this story is not known amongst a lot of the public, but during the third apparition, St. Bernadette, when she was walking to Lourdes and she was walking to the grotto to see Our Lady, she said all of a sudden she heard all of this screaming and hissing and swearing coming from the trees and all around her. And she realized that they weren't people. She realized that there was another force out here. She realized that something very evil was around. And they realized that they weren't yelling at her, they were yelling at Our Lady to get out of there. Because the evil one knows when Our Lady appears somewhere, it's over, right? I mean, the whole place is going to get transformed. And she said all Our Lady did is she was looking and smiling at Bernadette, and then all she did is slowly turn towards where the screaming and the swearing came from, and she just stared. It was this blank face, and they instantly fell silent. The power of Our Lady's gaze. When you are doing outreach, when your main job is to get people to Christ, you have an absolute bullseye on you now. The evil one does not want anybody to get closer to Christ. So who is he going to attack? First and foremost, he's going to attack the people who are doing the outreach and doing the ministry. Protect yourselves. St. Paul is very clear about this in Ephesians, right? We're not fighting against flesh and blood, right? We're fighting against principalities, powers, the darkness of the present time, right? And I don't know how much spiritual warfare you may or may not experience in your own ministry, but I can tell you in New York City, it is ground zero. It's amazing, some of the attacks, the spiritual attacks that happen there, but there's nothing to be afraid of. He's a dog on a leash. But the point is, protect yourselves. And Our Lady is so powerful in protecting. Give her permission. Let her keep her gaze on your program, on your outreach. Let her wrap your mantle around it. There's a whole talk I gave on Marian consecration, but we got to move on. It's only got a few more minutes. The second big thing I would say is something very powerful about divine mercy. Because again, my main job is to help young adults encounter Christ, right? Everything flows in and through the sacraments. That is the most important. But I would say in our day and age, the two most powerful tools that God has given us is Marian consecration and divine mercy. John Paul II talked about how we're living in the time of mercy. What does that mean? He said that we're living, quite literally, in the time of the greatest evil. And he's not talking about his time. He was talking about the new millennium. He was talking about our time. And this is a shocking statement coming from John Paul II, because if you know anything about his background, this is the guy who grew up during the Nazi occupation, that he had friends nearby who got shipped off to nearby Auschwitz, was only about 45 miles away. This is the guy who was a young priest during the Communist Reformation. This is the guy who had an assassination attempt on him. And he didn't say that was the time of the greatest evil. He said, now the time that we're living in is the time of the greatest evil. And it kind of talks about what we heard about the smartphone. He was basically saying that there's tremendous blessings in all the technology that we have right now. We can there's goodness, we can reach the gospel to the ends of the earth in a way and a speed that has never happened in the history of the world. With that being said, that also means evil, in a very powerful and effective way, has a large and wide spread, and a quicker spread than in a time in our day and age than it ever has in the history of the world. So, with that understanding, what do you mean we're living in the time of great mercy? What does St. Paul say? Where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. That means that there are graces and power that's being offered in our generation now that has never been offered in the history of the church. And all we need to do is to tap into these graces. So I'm looking at, when I'm reaching out to the young adults, how can I get these young adults in touch with these unbelievable amounts of grace that God is offering us in our day and age that's never been offered in the history of the church? And in just my own experience, I can't tell you how many young adults have encountered Jesus so powerfully through Marian consecration and divine mercy. And what divine mercy really all is, mercy comes from the Latin word misericordia, which means to give one's heart to one who is in misery. Divine mercy is Jesus literally giving his sacred heart to all of us humanity who are in misery. And I tell you, and anybody who's involved in youth ministry, young adult ministry, these young people are in misery. There is a lot of pain and suffering and loneliness happening. So I take it very seriously. What am I to do? I'm trying to help these young adults encounter and to get healed and to encounter the merciful love of Jesus Christ. And love and mercy really is love's second name. I love this. Mercy is love's second name. That means mercy is when love meets someone's sinfulness, suffering, loneliness, brokenness. A lot of young adults that I'm dealing with are suffering, they're alone, they're sinful, they're lonely, they're broken. So I take it very seriously of getting them encountered with Jesus to experience his merciful love. And, the divine mercy, it comes from the diary of St. Faustina. And, this whole talk, I give talks on this now. I'm not going to obviously can't go into it now. But it's like 5 real brief things so how do you tap into these graces? It's the Feast of Divine Mercy. It's the image of Divine Mercy, the Novena of Divine Mercy, the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, the Hour of Great Mercy. Easy word to remember all those is finch, little bird finch. Feast, image, novena, chaplet, hour. Get them in touch with it. And then a spiritual intent. We focus on, I've realized when I consecrate the program to Our Lady and we have a unified spiritual intent. So what does that mean? We do all of our programming. If it's bar hopping, going clubbing, to the Holy Hour and Mass, we always have the same spiritual intent. We offer up this Mass, this Eucharist, or this bowling, or this whatever, for consoling the heart of Jesus, for reparation for sins committed against the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And we have just found that when we unify our spiritual intent with all of our coordinators, we have 7 full-time people, it's just amazing the torrents of grace that have been pouring down to when you go bar hopping, to obviously, of course, when they're in line for confession and adoration and at the young adult Mass. And I have just about a minute left. I'll just share one brief example of this. The first time we decided to do this spiritual intent, we were having Matt Maher do he was leading the music for our Cardinal Dolan Mass. We got about 2,000 young adults at St. Patrick's Cathedral. And I asked Matt, I was like, Matt, can you sing the Divine Mercy Chaplet? And he's like, yeah, I don't know too much about that. He was like, tell me more about that. And I was able to share with him the Divine Mercy message and all this stuff. So he was like, yeah, absolutely, we'll sing it. He says he was walking to St. Patrick's Cathedral, and he said the Holy Spirit inspired him with this new jingle. He said, now, I'm not a musician, but he was like, Colin, you have to understand, I'm not a jingle artist. He's like, I write the words, other people help me with the jingle, if you will. And he said, I just felt the Holy Spirit inspiring me to do this jingle. And he did it during our hour of adoration beforehand and in the confessions. And I just can't tell you, it wasn't the biggest Mass we ever had. We saw more people coming out crying from confessions while he was doing that chaplet than we've ever seen ever before. And it's just because it was simple that we just invited him and you've united the spiritual intent of why we were doing what we're doing. But my time is up. But there's so much more to be said. But I thank you for your time, and I'll take questions afterwards. God bless you.